Dr. Tharoor, beginning with you. The interim government in Bangladesh is already in shape. There was a lot of speculation about the role of Jamaat and other political parties. I think we have a fair understanding of how the interim government looks like. As an Indian and someone who understands Bangladesh and its politics and diplomacy at the larger level, how do you look at the India-Bangladesh ties now?
Look, I start off with the premise that our fundamental interest lies in close and friendly relations with Bangladesh. Our basic commitment is to the well-being of the Bangladeshi people. The Bangladeshi state comes second, and any individual Bangladeshi leader comes third. That would be my starting point. We are with the people of Bangladesh. We were with them in 1971. We've been with them through thick and thin, even when they had governments in charge of their state who were less than friendly to us. We've managed to keep our relationship on an even keel, more or less, and certainly there should be no deterioration in that relationship in the time to come. The interim government, as far as I'm concerned, is not any cause for anxiety on India's part, in that Mr. Muhammad Yunus is a known commodity. I've certainly known him personally. Many other Indian leaders have come across him internationally in various capacities. He's a highly respected figure. And if anything, I suppose he is somewhat close to Washington rather than being seen as close to the Jamaat-e-Islami or the Pakistani ISI or any of those figures. In fact, if you look at the overall composition of this interim government, not all the figures are very well known here, but there doesn't seem to be any particular reason for India to feel any anxiety about countries hostile to us having put their stamp on this interim government. The big concern has always been whether Pakistan and China will fish in troubled waters. I know our government can't speak this kind of language, but as a member of the opposition, I can be frank with you. And in this kind of context, there is always a possibility that the Pakistani ISI could have had a hand in some of the outrageous incidents of violence that happened during the agitation. There's always a possibility that the Chinese, who have a strong presence in Bangladesh, might have seen this as an opportunity to expand their influence. Those are the kinds of things that people watching relations in the subcontinent are most concerned about. But certainly, there is no indication of anything in the composition of the interim government or the initial statements of Mr. Yunus that would give us any cause for worry. Mr. Yunus has talked about peace, calm, stability, protection of minorities. All of this should be music to our ears.
Dr. Tharoor, the fact is that Prime Minister Modi and former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina have had a personal understanding. Their equation actually ensured that the bilateral ties between the two countries really flourished. Do you see her presence in India as more of a matter of concern for us?
If we had not helped her, it would have been a disgrace for India. And nobody would have wanted to be our friend if we had treated our friend badly. No, I think Sheikh Hasina has had relationships with all Indian leaders, both of the present government and of the opposition. She is a friend of India's and India is a friend of hers. And when a friend is in trouble, you don't look twice before you help them come out of their trouble, bring them and keep them safe and so on. And that's exactly what India has done. I applaud the government for doing it. In fact, I would have wanted nothing less. As an Indian, I think that we have certain standards we must stand for in the world, and the government has done the right thing to bring her here and ensure her safety. For how long she wishes to remain, that's not for us. You don't call someone to your house and then ask them, when are you leaving? So my own view is we wait and see how long she would feel that she can stay before she moves on. And I think that there are practical considerations that will always come in the way of any moving to any other country. There are visa considerations and other issues that have to be borne in mind. For now, she is with us, and I think we should be proud of the fact that we have stood by a friend when her personal safety was in danger.
Okay, that's actually very beautifully put, Dr. Tharoor, that Sheikh Hasina is our friend and she's our guest. But talking about the attack on minorities, do you think that the government has to be more vehement in raising concerns around it?
Look, I mean, there are conflicting reports coming out of Bangladesh. There certainly have been some attacks, and no one can deny that. No one should deny that. It's a fact. There are reports coming, and people have been killed. Facilities like the ISKCON temple have been vandalized. All of this is undoubtedly the case. At the same time, there is no doubt that there are also stories coming out of Bangladeshi Muslims guarding Hindu homes and temples and so on. So there's a bit of good news also during all the bad news. And Professor Yunus's statement that the government stands by the minorities and urges people to be calm and to stop the acts of violence, that's a very good sign. I think any continuing violence will be definitely instigated by those elements in Bangladeshi society who have traditionally been anti-Indian, anti-Hindu, and who frankly will do whatever it takes to create the kind of conditions of disorder that may give them an opportunity to come again and fish in troubled waters, as we were saying. But for now, I don't believe there's anyone in authority in Bangladesh who wants to see that situation continue. And with Professor Yunus's clear and unequivocal language, and of course, his ability to ask the military to start getting involved in reimposing law and order, we hopefully will get some peace. One challenge is, of course, the military made it clear to Sheikh Hasina that they will not fire on any protesters, and that presumably will apply even to the agitators and vandals. But they can presumably take steps, tear gas, water cannon, I don't know, the things you can always do to restore law and order, even if you don't want to shoot at people, which by and large is my view as well, that we should not have law and order forces shooting at civilians.
All right, Dr. Tharoor, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Everything nowadays is moved to the cloud, running on the cloud, or is stored in the cloud. Hence, the demand for certified cloud practitioners is increasing across all sectors of the economy, and it has now become an essential skill that you need to make it in the web development industry. Hi all, I welcome you to this Edureka session, which will serve as a roadmap to the AWS Cloud Practitioner certification. The main objective here is to be able to prove that you can work with cloud computing and with AWS. So you're going to have a lot more job opportunities available to you. So before we begin, let's address a few questions that you all might have about the CCP or the Certified Cloud Practitioner to determine whether it's the right certification for you. So the CCP is all about the foundational knowledge, and what that means is that it can show stakeholders that you know your way around the AWS console. You know the general offerings from AWS, and it's like a light version of the Solutions Architect Associate, which is another certification offered by AWS. But CCP has some very unique offerings which no other certification on AWS platform have, which is that it has a strong focus on billing and business-centric concepts. And that is why it makes a lot of sense why a lot of people who try to obtain the CCP are in sales or management, because it's going to give them the knowledge to help inform stakeholders and business leaders the reasons as to why they should use AWS. So the next thing that probably might confuse a few people is that why should they get this certification? Firstly, it's one of the easiest AWS certifications out there. So if not anything, it should definitely give you a confidence boost. It basically adds to your certification count superficially if that's something your companies care about, and that is why you don't see a lot of developers doing this certification. The second thing is it gets you familiar with your test and its environment. Now, if you're somebody that aspires to take the Solutions Architect Associate exam, you wouldn't want that to be your first exam, because it could prove to be pretty hard in an unfamiliar environment. But like we discussed before, this is a way simpler exam to approach. After succeeding in the CCP, you could definitely proceed to prepare for the Solutions Architect Associate or any other advanced certification. Moving on, let's discuss how long would you take to prepare for this exam. Now, if you are a developer, you're already working in the industry, you can pass this exam in less than a week. You need about 8 hours of structured practice, and that should do it for you. If you are a bootcamp graduate, we'd recommend about 15 hours, which is equivalent to a week and a half of studying and practice, and you shall be good to go. Finally, if you're from the sales and management background, you probably do not have a lot of developer experience or experience with the cloud infrastructure. So we're looking at about 20 hours of study, but once you get a grasp of the concepts, it should be fairly easy for you to crack this examination. And it's not really a huge time requirement. These numbers are just to give you an idea of the rough amount of time you need to put in to prepare for this examination. Moving on, let's discuss a few exam details. Now, you can take this exam in person at a test center or online through a proctored exam. The cost of this examination is $100 and it is the most inexpensive of all the certifications in the AWS suite. Its duration is 90 minutes or an hour and a half, but it shouldn't actually take you that long to finish your exam. So optimize your time and make sure you review all of your answers before you submit. There will be 65 questions for you to answer, and the passing score is 70%, which actually is quite a hard number. And once you get certified, the certificate is valid for 3 years. So that's quite a long time. So there you go. Hopefully, this answers all the questions that you have had about the certified cloud practitioner. With that, let's move on to the outline of this session. So we start out with some fundamental cloud concepts. We are going to discuss what is cloud computing, certain advantages and benefits to cloud computing, the different types, as well as deployment models in cloud computing. Next, we shall be introducing you to the AWS cloud infrastructure. We'll give you a map overview and discuss other important concepts such as regions, availability zones, edge locations, so on and so forth. We shall also get started on our AWS account, change our IAM user, activate the MFA on the root account, create individual user, and see how to set a password policy. Next, we shall move on to our hands-on section where we shall discuss the AWS Elastic Compute Cloud or the Amazon EC2, Amazon Machine Images, Auto Scaling Groups, Elastic Load Balancer, the Amazon S3 or Simple Storage Service, AWS CloudFront, the Amazon RDS or the Relational Database Service, and finally, AWS Lambda. Then we shall have a technology overview where we shall discuss AWS networking, database services, provisioning services, computing services, storage services, business-centric services, as well as logging services. And finally, we shall talk about billing and pricing in AWS, where we shall discuss the various pricing models, the AWS Marketplace, and the AWS Pricing Calculator. With that, I come to the end of our agenda for today. Kindly take up this time to subscribe to us, and don't forget to hit that bell icon to never miss an update from the Edureka YouTube channel. Also, for different tools and technologies under AWS, don't forget to check out our AWS certification training, the link to which will be given in the description box below. So without much ado, let's get started.
Firstly, let's understand why cloud. To understand this, we need to understand the situation that existed before cloud came into existence. So what happened back then? Well, firstly, in order to host a website, you had to buy a stack of servers. And we all know that servers are very costly. So that meant we ended up paying a lot of money. Next was the issue of traffic. Now, as we all know, if we are hosting a website, we are dealing with traffic that is not constant throughout the day. And that meant more pain. We would understand that as we move further. And the other thing was monitoring and maintaining your servers. Yes, this is a very big problem. Now, all these issues, they led to certain disadvantages. What are those? As I mentioned, servers are very costly. Yes, the setup was again costly, and thus you ended up paying a lot of money. And there were other factors contributing to this point. Let's discuss those as well. One, troubleshooting was a big issue. Since you're dealing with a business, Your prime focus is on taking good decisions so that your business does well. But if you end up troubleshooting problems or you focus more on infrastructure related issues, then you cannot focus more on your business. And that was a problem. So either you had to do multitasking or you had to hire more people to focus on those issues. Thus, again, you ended up paying more money. As I've discussed, the traffic on a website is never constant. And since it varies, you are not certain about its patterns. Say, for example, I need to host a website. And for that, what I decide is I'm reserving 2 petabytes of total memory for my usage based on the traffic. But as the traffic varies, there would be times when the traffic is high and my whole 2 petabytes of data is consumed or space is consumed rather. But what if the traffic is very low for certain hours of the day? I'm actually not utilizing these servers. So I end up paying more money for the servers than I should be. So yes, upscaling was an issue. So all these things were an issue because we were paying more money. We did not have sufficient time to take our decisions properly. There was ambiguity. There was more trouble monitoring and maintaining all these resources. And apart from that, one important point which we need to consider is the amount of data that is being generated now and that was being generated then. Then it was okay. But nowadays, if you take a look at it, the amount of data that is generated is huge. And this is another reason why cloud became so important. Yeah, as I've mentioned the data, now we all know that everything is going online these days. And what that means is we shop online, we buy food online, we do almost everything that is required, as in whatever information we need, we get everything online. Your bookings, your reservations, everything can be taken care of. That means we have a lot of data that is being generated these days, and this is digital data. Back in those times, we were communicating through verbal discussions and all those things, so through paperwork, and that was a different data to maintain. Since everything is moving on cloud or moving online, the amount of data that we have is huge these days. And then when you have this huge amount of data, you need a space where you can actually go ahead and maintain this data. So yes, again, there was a need of this space. And all these issues, that is your cost, your monitoring, your maintenance, providing sufficient space, everything was taken care by cloud. So let us try to understand what this cloud is exactly. Well, think of it as a huge space that is available online for your usage. Now, this is a very generic definition to give you. To be more specific, I would be saying that think of it as a collection of data centers. Now, data centers, again, are a place where you store your data or you host applications basically. So, when you talk about these data centers, they were already existing. So, what did cloud do differently? Well, what cloud did was it made sure that you are able to orchestrate your various functionings, your applications, managing your resources properly by combining all these data centers together through a network and then providing you the control to use these resources and to manage them properly. To make it even more simpler, I would say there was a group of people or organizations basically that went ahead and bought these servers, these compute capacities, storage places, compute services, and all those things. And they have their own channel or network. All you have to do was go ahead and rent those resources only to the amount you need it and also for the time that you need it. So, yes, this is what cloud did. It let you rent the services that you need and use only those services that you need. So, you ended up paying for the services that you rented and you ended up saving a lot of money. The other thing is these service providers, they take care of all the issues like your security, your underlying infrastructures, and all those things. So you can freely focus on your business and stop worrying about all these issues. So this is what cloud is. In simple words, it's a huge space which has all these services available, and you can just go ahead and pick and rent those services that you want to use. So what is cloud computing? Well, I've already discussed that. Just to summarize it, I would say it is nothing but an ability, or it is a place where you can actually store your data, you can process it, and you can access it from anywhere in the world. Now, this is an important point. Say, for example, you decide to choose a region for your infrastructure somewhere in US, maybe in India, and you can still have access to all your resources that is there in US. All you need is a good internet connection. So that is what cloud does. It makes the world accessible. It lets you have your applications wherever you want to and manage them the way you want to. So this was about cloud computing, guys. Next, we would be discussing different service models. Now, you need to understand one thing. You are being offered cloud services, the platform to use your services or your applications basically. But then different people have different requirements. There are certain people who just want to consume a particular resource, or there are certain people who actually want to go ahead and create their own applications, create their own infrastructure, and all those things. So based on these needs, we have particular service models. That is, your cloud providers provide you with a particular model which suits your needs. So let us try to understand these models one by one. Well, we have these three models, that is your IaaS, your PaaS, and your SaaS. I would be discussing them in the reverse order. That is, I would be talking about SaaS first, and then I would go upwards. So let us start with SaaS or SaaS. SaaS is nothing but a software as a service. Now, what happens here is basically you're just consuming a service which is already being maintained and handled by someone else. To give you a valid example, we have a Gmail. All you do is you send mail to people and you receive mails. And whatever functionality you do is you just use the service that is there. You do not have to maintain it. You do not have to worry about upscaling, downscaling, security issues, and all those things. Everything is taken care by Google. Say, for example, your Gmail is what I'm talking about. Google manages everything here. So all you have to worry about is consuming that service. Now, this model is known as software as a service, that is SaaS. Next, we have PaaS, that is platform as a service. Now, here you are provided with a platform where you can actually go ahead and build your own applications. To give you an example, we have our Google App Engine. Now, when you talk about Google App Engine, what you can do is you can go ahead and you can create your own applications and you can put it on Google App Engine so that others can use it as well. So in short, you're using that platform to create your own applications. And lastly, we have IaaS, that is infrastructure as a service. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, the whole infrastructure is provided to you so that you can go ahead and create your own applications. That is, an underlying structure is given to you. Based on that, you can go ahead and choose your operating systems, the kind of technology you want to use on that platform, the applications you want to build, and all those things. So that is what an IaaS is, infrastructure as a service, basically. So these were the different models that I wanted to talk about. I hope it is clear to all of you. Now, this is the architecture that gives you a clear depiction as in what happens as far as these service models are concerned. Now you have something called as your SaaS. Now here, as you see, all you're doing is you're consuming your data, that's it, or using it. Everything else is